Hello YouTube, it's finally tennis season where I live, so I figured to make a little instructional video on how to string a tennis racket. So it's going to be in a drop weight stringer. I have a Gamma X-2. It's 2 mounting points here. Some of them have 4, some have 6. I think 2 is good enough for me, good enough for most people. It's cheap. It's like 160 bucks, so you definitely get your money's worth. I mean, the string job costs what, like 20 bucks, and they send you 5 packs of strings. So some people say it's unreliable. Not really, as long as you make sure that this weight right here, when you tension the string, it's horizontal, completely horizontal to like sea level, then it's going to be pretty accurate. And even if you're off by like 10 degrees, if you're stringing at 60 pounds, you're only going to be stringing at 61 or 59 pounds, so pretty accurate. It is a little more time consuming. So anyway, I guess we'll get started. First thing you're going to need is a racket. It's been sitting around all winter, so strings are getting notched. They're not so good. So the first thing you should know about stringing is if you do cut your strings, if you don't break them from hitting the ball around, you want to cut from the inside out. So you cut maybe right in the middle there and go around clockwise, counterclockwise, whatever. It just has to do with the strings carrying a lot of tension. I mean, if each one's tensioned at 60 pounds, that's a lot of force on the frame, and you want to keep the forces even. So you kind of just go around in circles here, just so there's not uneven stresses on the frame. Okay, so I wasn't gonna make you watch me take the strings out of my racket. That's pretty self-explanatory. So I'm not gonna talk too much about string selection and look all that stuff up online. Strings can either come in packs, which you've probably seen if you've ever been to the sporting goods store. So what does it say here? It's 40 feet. That's enough to do a racket. Otherwise, you might see a reel. So if you own a stringer, you're probably going to want to find a string that you like and get a reel of string, because it's way cheaper. If you do the math, I mean, I just get synthetic gut. If you do the math on something like this, it's like 40 bucks, and it strings like 18 rackets or something like that, so a couple bucks per string job is pretty good. I personally go with Gossin synthetic gut, in my opinion. All synthetic gut is pretty much the same, and this is by far the cheapest. If you're doing your own strings, strings come in different gauges, 15, 16, 17, 18. The higher the number, the thinner the diameter of the string, so it's lighter. The lighter the string, the better for everything except durability, but I like to string my racket a lot anyways, because a new string job feels like you pretty much have a new racket. The next step is measuring out this amount of string that you need. So you can find manufacturer's specs on how much string you'll need. If you have one of these packs of 40 feet, you can just cut it right in half, and 20 feet will cover your mains and your crosses. You don't have to do much measuring that way. You actually have to mount the racket next. Alright, so now we're going to mount the racket. If you have a machine, it's pretty self-explanatory. There's just these little knobs that screw on and off of the spindle. Okay, so we need to center our racket. The other thing, it's a good thing that this didn't fit right. There's this Allen head thing. It's an Allen wrench. There's a couple of hex screws right here and on the other side that you will need to loosen so you can adjust this for the racket. Some rackets are shorter, some rackets are longer, so you do need to adjust this back and forth so the racket will fit on it. So you want these little pad things that I was talking about before to pretty much come in contact with the racket frame itself. And just tighten it down. The next step, aside from allowing your racket to fit on the machine, is to center it. So centering it, left and right. There's gonna be some sort of mark, a dot maybe, or on mine there's a pattern. I can show some close-up pictures. Hopefully I'll be able to edit those in. Bottom side too. There's some. I'll show you another picture of this down here later on. It'll be an easy way to tell what the center of your racket is. Hopefully I can get into that a little bit more. So center the top. Put that on and spend all day screwing this down. Okay, now for the bottom one, once again center it up, and I can usually tell just by looking at the bottom part right here. Centered. And now is a great time to readjust this. It wasn't quite on, wasn't quite far enough back. You can also tell if it's not far enough back just by if this thing is making contact with a lot of the racket. You're going to want to make it, you know, hold your racket on there pretty good. There's a lot of forces involved in stringing. You want to wreck your racket. Another side note, if your racket's cracked or damaged, if it's gonna break, it's probably gonna be during stringing. So if you're stringing a buddy's racket and he says, hey, this is cracked, can you string it? You might want to warn him first, you know, don't take responsibility for it breaking. Alright, crank them down real good. Ready to measure off our string. So now we are going to measure our string out. However you want to do it, it's up to you. I used to take my time measuring it with an actual measuring tape or a ruler or something. That's just kind of tedious. And it's been a while since I've actually strung this racket, so I need to, I'll show you the way I do it. I need to figure out how many mains and crosses are on here. It says 16 by 19, so that means 16 mains. Remember, mains go up and down, and 19 crosses go that way. Some people, you know, they know their wingspan, so if maybe you need 21 feet or whatever, and you're 6 feet tall, 3 of these plus 1 of these, that's 21 feet. Or you can measure it out like I said I did. Kind of a waste of time. Alright, so this is the way I'm going to measure my string. Like I said, 19 mains, so I'm just going to measure across the length of the racket, or the long length of the racket, 19 times. So, 1, 2, 3... It's 19. One more for good measure, because it's always good to have more string than not enough string. Because if you don't have enough string, you're kind of screwed. If you have more, yeah, you waste a little bit, but less than $2 a string job. Wasting a foot of string is not that big of a deal. So you're a lot better off doing that than starting all the way over. So now we have our string measured out for our mains. And well, now we got to make sure that it's equal on both sides, because we're going to start, well, I'll show you how we start. We start in the middle of the racket, and then we go out. So you're going to start in the middle, then tension as we go. You'll see how it works in a couple seconds here. Okay, so like I said, your mains, the string job for your mains is going to start in the center of your racket and go out from the middle. So your strings are either going to have to, well, let's see here. You have two strings. They're either going to go in the racket like that to start off with, or they're going to go in the racket like that to start off with. It depends on the racket. Actually, you're going to have to look at the bottom of the racket. If you got a racket like this, you can just tell by this bottom plastic piece here which way the strings need to start out going. I have a couple of close-up pictures that I will put in here. So yeah, like I said, this racket, you're actually going to start from this end, put the strings in that way. This particular racket, as you can see from the picture, you start with the strings like this and put them through that way. Is basically this little bottom piece in the pictures I'll put on screen. You want the string to lie in the grooves or sit in the little troughs or valleys, whatever you want to call them. So whichever way you need to put the string through the racket to make that happen, do that. So I'll get these started. At the top, remember you got, and then you can drop your string, which is always fun. All right. And string. So to make this equal, what I like to do is just grab these so they're straight and just walk across the room with it, making sure they stay together, and then you'll have two perfectly equal lengths of string for each side of the racket. Make sure everything goes through nicely. No any knots or anything. Even, and we want to stay even. So this is what these clamps are for. These clamps make stringing possible. They basically stop the strings from moving back and forth like this. It's rough in the center. They're adjustable. If you turn this knob counterclockwise, it's going to make the string or the clamps not clamp as hard. If you turn it to the right, it's going to make them clamp really hard. You want to have them clamp as hard as reasonably possible, just so you can still get them on and off. I mean, you don't want to be using all your might to clamp and unclamp them, but you should be putting some muscle into clamping them. That way the strings aren't going to slip. If your strings are slipping, you know, you might have uneven strings, you're going to have uneven tensions. This is just not good. So I'm going to clamp this so this string cannot move relative to itself, I guess you would say. Alright, that's tight. So you can't do anything yet. It's impossible to tension these first two strings because there's not another string to attach another clamp to prevent them moving along one another. So some people like to tension, you know, this entire side and that entire side, but just to keep forces on the racket even, I like to tension, you know, bam, 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 that type of thing. So now we have an extra string through the racket on both sides of the clamp, but not tensioned yet. So the next step is tensioning. So what we're going to do is I decided I want my racket tensioned at 60 pounds. That means there's 60 pounds of tension in each string. So what we're going to do is we're going to look on this bar here. It's numbered off. There's a couple numbers. The scale you want to pay attention to is the one that starts at 25, and there's a marking every, I don't know, quarter inch or so. So it goes 25, 30, 35, 40. I'm going to mark mine at 60. What you want to do to set it at 60 on this particular stringer is have this face of the weight line up with your tension, your desired tension. So I got it set to 60 now, and we're ready to tension. Alright, so this is where the magic happens. We have our string, and this is how you wrap it around the barrel here. There's a little diamond plate in there that grips the string. So to start tensioning the string, you're going to wrap the string around here, put it through here, kind of hold on to it, and then just let this drop. It's not good right now. You definitely want it to be completely horizontal. In fact, this is resting just because it went past its limit. So what you do next is you grab onto this real tight. It's a ratcheting mechanism, so you're going to hold on to this, or keep this barrel part stationary, and lift up the drop weight. Still not good enough. The first one tends to stretch a lot because you're pretty much tensioning two strings at once. And then you basically keep going. So it's pretty close to 90. As a side note, it doesn't matter if you're a degree below or above. You're going to be below tension either way, but not by much. It's pretty close. So there we are. We're pretty horizontal. Okay, so now the string closest to you is the one that has all the tension in it. So we don't want to let that tension go away, so we're going to keep the tension there by locking it to the closest string. And we lock it to the closest string with our floating clamps. So we're going to go ahead and lock that. And you always want to put the clamp as close as you can to the drop weight. That's just because if you put it way over here, you'll lose tension from here to there. If you put it way over here, you're only going to lose tension from here to there. So you have that much less length of string to lose tension from. So that's locked. Now that it's locked next to the other string, you can pick up your drop weight and repeat with the other string. Okay, so I just got to a part for the first 5 or so strings. You're just going to be cruising along. There's only one possible hole to really put the string in. But all of a sudden I got this other part where there's another hole that goes a hole, and then another little guy, and then another hole. The other hole is actually for the cross string. It's pretty easy to figure out. If you get your racket pre-strung from the factory or from wherever you order it from, it's gonna have little string indentations in the grommet. The plastic part that all the holes, that are all the holes, is called the grommet. So you're gonna have indentations. You're gonna see where the string was initially strung, but it's also really easy to figure out. Just keep the distance between strings relatively consistent. The further you get from the center, it actually gets a little bit further apart, but you don't want to see it getting closer together, I guess is my point. You'll see it spreading apart ever so slightly, and it's pretty self-explanatory to figure out which holes the strings will go in. If you can't figure it out just by looking at it, you can go online, you can look up string patterns. I don't know, when I first started stringing, I was looking at string patterns and thinking, oh, what the heck, what do all these numbers mean? How am I going to know what they mean? I still don't know what they mean, and I'm pretty good at stringing rackets. It's not something, you don't really need to know how to decipher that code, but deciphering that code will let you know where to, put all the strings. If you don't know, it's going to tell you which ones to skip, which ones are shared. Okay, so now we've gotten to the last string, and now you're thinking to yourself, well, I ran out of room. What do I do? What you're going to want to do is, this is where we tie the string off. So you're going to want to put your clamp as close as you reasonably can to the frame, or that way. And we're clamping it, it's tensioned. A lot of people, because what happens here is when you tie off and you release the clamp, you're going to lose some tension. Do not over tension. In fact, you're supposed to just tension it to the normal tension, clamp it, then tie it off. That little bit of tension that you lose when you release the clamp is fine. So don't over tension, please. That cracking that you hear, if it comes through on the video, that's a little bit of slippage going on in here. It's fine, a little bit of cracking is alright. So you're going to have shared holes in your racket frame. There's going to be holes in the grommet in the frame that are big enough for 2 strings to fit through. So now we're going to tie our string off. There's a few different tie off knots. I only know one off the top of my head right now because it works for me. It's, I don't know, probably called the basic tie off knot or something, I'm not sure. There's an acronym for it, I do remember this. It's called OUT. It stands for over, under, through. You do that twice. So you're going to have the string over the string bed, and then you're going to put the string under the string bed. And then you're going to put your string, I cut off way too much string, but whatever, it's better than not enough. So now you have this little, you formed a loop, and now the loop is underneath the string bed relative to you. You put your string through that loop. And you can really crank on it. This is easy with synthetic gut because it's, well, flexible. But this helps prevent tension loss. Right over here, there'll be a big loop. The smaller you get that loop, the better. So you can grab onto this with your pliers, really crank around on it. You can pull pretty hard, and that just helps prevent tension loss. And the less the better, but still don't over tension. So I'll just cut this off for now because it's in my way. And I'll do the other side. Okay, so I got both tie-offs done. I don't know if I mentioned that, they're called tie-offs. And now we can take our clamps off because the strings aren't going to move because they are tied here and here. You can find your shared holes. It's information you can find. Otherwise, you can just try to poke through until your string goes through, because it's not going to go through a hole that's not shared. That's not entirely true. You can make it happen. For example, if you got a... Sometimes they do still make rackets that are one-piece string jobs, and you can make them into two-piece string jobs. It's not fun, but it can be done. There's not enough two-piece or shared holes in those really to do a two-piece job, but you can make it happen. But I digress. So there we go. We have our mains done. So we're halfway there. That's the easy part. That's the quick part. The other part is the crosses. So okay, so now it is time for crosses. Do the same trick I used before. I got 19 crosses. I'm going to go ahead and measure across 19 times. So we have to start the mains. You can start technically from the bottom, or from, towards the throat or the handle of the racket. But from what I've read, you're supposed to start towards the top. Okay, so I'm going to find another shared hole to get the crosses started. So to start the crosses, you actually need to anchor this string. So to anchor this string, you do a simple over, under, through, just one of them, and leave a little bit of a tail here because this knot is going to tighten when you start to tension the crosses. So just give it a yank. I like stringing. I'm a bit maybe like an old lady who likes basket weaving. It's fine. I kind of enjoy sitting down. It takes about a half hour. And that's the other thing with stringing. Some people will tell you that, well, yeah, I guess you save money, but it also takes you a bunch of time. So it takes me less time to string a racket than it did to go back and forth to the sporting goods store twice. So doesn't matter if you start over or under. If you think about it, if you're trying to racket upside down, over is under and under is over. So what I like to do is make a little loop like this. So make a loop. I started under, so I'm going to go over, and I'm just going to drag the string across. So you want to drag at an angle. That makes it a lot easier. If you try to drag where all the strings are, it's just gonna make the job tougher for you. So then you just put it back through the other one there, and this is once again blocked just like on the other side here. It's pretty symmetrical. Okay, next point I want to make is you're gonna pull these mains or these crosses through. you don't want, once again, another thing that I've read, never experienced myself because I never tried it, you can burn your strings or notch them if you don't move them down, up and down the string bed like this. If you just leave it in one spot and just pull, I guess all that friction between the two strings might not necessarily be good for them. Alright, so you can't tension this string obviously because there's nothing else to clamp to. Okay, so this right here, this cross is over the main, so I need to make sure that this cross, or when I put this new string past this main, that since this one's over, this one needs to be under, and they alternate over, under, over, under. So I'm gonna, in order to make this cross go under this main, I'm gonna go over this one. And some people, I mean, you can push the loop through, you can go side to side. I prefer to just pull the loop through, actually. Okay, so I'll tension this now. Sometimes it can be hard to get your clamp in there because it's so close to the this arm on the stringer, and because it's close to the end of the racket. Just muscle it in there, it's fine. From now on, it's a whole lot of nothing. And now you actually don't need the racket on here anymore. All you have to do is tie it off. And it's actually, the hole that I need to go through is blocked a little bit by this pad. So I'm going to lift it up a little bit. And like I said, same tie off, the whole over, under, through thing. You can go back and rewind if you need to see that again. And once again, I took off way too much string. Take off the clamp, and that's it. That's pretty much it for stringing. So once again, it's the Gamma X-2 stringer. Probably not much different than any drop weight stringer. I don't have any complaints about it. Now you're going to have all these little things on your racket, little extra pieces of string. The best tool that I've found for that is a fingernail clipper. Unscrew these. It out, and you're done. Thanks for watching. If you have any questions, post them and I'll try to let you know. Otherwise, happy hitting, and the more you string, the better they get. Practice makes perfect, just like anything. Start out slow, but you'll get the hang of it and you'll be cruising through rackets in no time. So, hope you enjoyed.